down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
What up, what up, what up? This is your friend, Steve VanCauwenbergh, the Savvy Landlord, and you just tuned in to the Savvy Radio Show. Oh, man, I'm juicy. Why am I juicy? Well, it's the first of the month. Yep, August. Time to get paid. If you're a landlord, I used to get all frustrated about that because I had to pay my mortgages, but if your cash flow's running in, you should be juicy. Anyway, that's not one of the reasons why I'm juicy. I am juicy because there's people out there that like the radio show. I appreciate you out there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, to send me some questions. I was like, man, I get juicy when you send me a question, and it doesn't matter if you think it's insignificant. It is big time to me. And I was like, wow, this is a question I never even thought about. So here's the question. How does the closing date work? And is it concrete? Who creates the closing day? Who's in control? How does it work? Who trumps who? Blah, blah, booty, boo, blah. Great question. All right. So who really pulls the strings? This is a great subject, and I'm going to be all over the world on this one, so be ready, get your pen, because I'm about to get it on. First of all, you as a buyer are in control of closing, per se. Now, there's a thing called smoke and mirrors, right? Duck and dodge, if you got a good title company, but it ultimately hinges the first line of defense. All these things have to be orchestrated together. They have to all be in sync. And I'll give you some examples where it could be defunct or have a problem, but we'll just kind of give you the gist of how it goes down. Number one, the title company is the one that really controls the closing date, time, and location. Now, you can do a on-location closing. I've done those where the closing company drives to you and you sign the documents there. You can do a closing through the mail, through FedEx. You cannot, and in the state of Oklahoma, I don't know anybody else, you cannot do it electronically. So you do have to have physical original documents, especially if there's money involved, aka a loan. Now, if you have the cash and you wired it in there may be some weird ways around it. Yes, I've been involved in transactions where people have been to South Africa. So yes, it's possible. But who determines the closing date? That is the ultimate question here. Well, the title company, the first thing they have to do, they have to get your abstract or do the research or find out what's going on. So usually in a standard contract, usually you put 30 days. Now, as a real estate investor like myself, I say this, I can close as soon as the title company's ready. Now, if you're a really good wholesaler, you lock up a house and you build a relationship with a closing company, and they are already pulling title work and getting the ball rolling behind the scenes. And at the same time, that wholesaler should be marketing the property, and then boom, they can close as soon as the title work's ready. And there's some times where it's taken 3 to 5 days. Now, that hinges on what? The title company. So no matter what you're doing, who you are, whatever the realtor says, whatever you think, or what your banker says, it ultimately hinges on the title company. And that's, if you've heard my podcast a while back, you could tell, and I'm very adamant about building a relationship with a title company because they control the strings. They could say, we've had a title issue. We can't get a hold of the seller. We can't get a payoff. The payoff number hasn't been released. They don't have a release. So thus we cannot issue title insurance and move on from there. If you listen to my podcast way back, I talk about title insurance and what goes on at the closing company. But so you can say I close ASAP, but you're really not. That's not accurate per se because it hinges on the title company. So this question that came in is who manages that? Now, you may get a concrete date, like, for example, August 30th, but the title work could be done August 10th and you could close. So there's no restriction on the time or fast or speed. That's the same thing, fast and speed, duh. But when you can get it closed. Now, it's sometimes that you will run into a title issue. What's a title issue? A title issue could mean it's clouded. not enough evidence to prove something, or the release of the lien, there's a double lien, or there's a mechanic's lien, there's all kinds of stuff. That's what the title company does. They ensure that there's clear title. But there's always title exceptions, meaning that the attorney will prove and issue insurance on the property except for these few exceptions. So you might want to read the title exceptions. But now you can put on the contract 30 days out, and there's some savvy real estate investors out there that put a contingency in their contract that says that this contract automatically moves on to 30 days from that 30 days. So technically that could be 60 days if you exercise that little hidden line in a savvy real estate investor contract. Now, for example, you're buying retail, or you're using a retail realtor, or you're using a licensed realtor in general. They have to get an addendum to the contract. So let's just say you're supposed to close August 10th and you can't close for some weird reason, that your tax return wasn't back in time, and this is a regular conventional loan and there's some drama going on. Both those realtors need to get with the seller and communicate that we're not going to close on the 10th, we're going to close on the 17th. We need an addendum for that. That's just to protect everyone there. Now, automatically, if you have a hard date of August 10th and the funds are not cleared, obviously you're not going to close. Now, if you are buying residential, there's this new thing called a CD. It's called instead of a HUD, it's called closing disclosure. Yeah, CD, closing disclosure. That's the new word for the government to tell you that you have 3 days to look at a closing document. This is for retail people, ladies and gentlemen. And if you change anything on that document, you have to wait 3 days. Call it a lemon law. Call it, I don't know, but predatory lending. People get all coaxed in and don't know what their fees are, what they're paying for. They have 3 days to get out of a transaction. In the real estate world, what I do, where I work in and day out, we have a HUD, and we can modify the HUD right there in closing. For example, I was at a closing the other day, and the seller did not bring the deposit or the rent credit that I needed for the property. And so I instructed the title lady, the escrow agent, to redo the HUD and reflect my concession or my credit or what's due me, the rent, for those days that are remaining since I own the property from this day forward. So now you could not do that on a residential retail situation. That's where the CD comes in. CD is called the closing disclosure, which is a new form of the HUD, which is a retail thing, and everyone has to look at it and everyone has to wait 3 days. So to answer your question, not necessarily you could delay closing. There was a time where I was supposed to close on a property. It took 54 days to close. Yes, and the sellers were irate. Yes, I had to sign a bunch of addendums. Seemed like every 7 days, but that's, government regulations, and things sometimes are out of your control. Now, if you have a great title company and you're trying to get funds, right? Okay, so let's talk from the real estate investor side. Hey, real estate investor, you broke, you got no money. You get a house on a contract from a wholesaler. And the wholesaler's like, we have to close by the 15th. That's what we got to do. But your hard money lender or your private IRA loan is not funded until the 16th. What you can do is communicate to the title company, hey, I need you to do me a favor here. Can you delay closing? And the reasons behind closing is that we're waiting on a documentation. So here's a delayed closing that just happened to me today. Actually, I'm recording this early, so would be a couple of days ago, but it was that we are selling a property through IRA, and for some, well, not some, but pretty much all IRA custodials have to look at the documents before they basically have to sign off. They're telling you, we're a custodial, we're in control, you're no one, it's your money, but the IRA company has to read your documents and they have to approve them. Thank you so much. I don't want to say their name. So that delayed closing, a gentleman wanted to close on a Friday because he's going out of town, but hey, their custodial needs to read these documents, which usually takes 3 days. I know you guys know who I'm talking about, but that's just the life. So to answer your question, it is a moving target. You have to have A closing date is a moving target. You have to have all these people in sync. For example, the seller has to be in sync. The seller could be in Alaska on vacation. You could be on vacation. The closing company could have title issues, clouded title, and their attorney has to look at it. All those things are working parts to make it happen. Now, can you do pre-sign for a closing date? Absolutely. I'm going out of town and I'm not going to be back in time, but we need to close this date by the 15th. You can pre-sign if your title company has their paperwork in order, so on and so forth, or they can FedEx it to you. So I don't know if this necessarily answers your question. But we try to set the closing date. Most title companies usually give you 3 to 5 days for a real estate investor timeline. I've also had 24-hour timeline. I've also had a deal that I did not too long ago, a couple of months ago, where it was like by the hour. The dude just kept delaying the closing. He got stung by a bee. I don't know if you heard that one. He was supposed to show up, disappeared, went back to Iowa, came back, and closed a week later. Drama, but it happens. It's a moving target. So who sets the date? You as a real estate investor, you and your title company, and then it goes down from there. Anyway, my name is Steven VanCauwenbergh. You tuned into the Savvy Radio Show. I'm excited that you listened to 10 minutes or 11 or 12, and I appreciate you sending these questions. These are wonderful questions. Ultimately, you are in control if you are the buyer. So let that be worn on that. Anyway, I got some great new content coming up. We're hitting the fall, so it's going to be cooled off. And if you want to hear something, I got a good question that came in from my homie. I don't want to say his name, but what do you do when you die? How do you pass it on? Ooh, I like it. I'm going to cover that one. It probably won't be so rock solid, but it will be my 2 cents on it. Anyway, my name is Steven VanCauwenbergh. I have way more episodes to the tune of 300 on the Savvy Radio Show. You go to click on the lip sync. It's the icon to the top right. It's a black box with green on it. Click on there and you can scroll and see all of them. The problem with iTunes only serves up about 50 at a time. There's over 350 in there. Get your learn on. Get your thing on. After you master and learn what you're trying to learn, go buy assets. Text your boy. Let me know what you want to hear.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at SavvyRadioShow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.